Today's lesson is Avoiding a Fishless Future. Hello everyone, my name is Jeff.
My name is Roger, and we're talking about the problem of overfishing, and we're trying to avoid a fishless future. Now, as I said before, of course, people in Taiwan love their seafood, so this is a big problem that needs to be addressed. Otherwise, we won't be able to enjoy our seafood banquets. And last time we talked about the fact that global fish stocks have been going down year after year, but fish demand has gone up. Remember, since 1950, there were around 20 million tons produced every year of fish from the oceans, and that number has increased to more than 90 million tons today. But we've got government subsidies and policies that favor these big operations that are basically taking all the fish out of the oceans. What are we going to do? We need to stop that. And we did leave on an optimistic note there. With proper management and better fishing practices, the numbers should recover pretty quickly.
Fingers crossed. These fisheries should come back if we fish them sustainably or if we leave them alone for a while. Hopefully one day we'll be able to have fish and chips with Atlantic cod in them once again. Yum,
Ooh.
yum, yum. But for now, hands off that particular fishery that has almost been hunted, or fished, I should say, to extinction. Anyways, folks, with that, it is time for us to take a short break. But don't go away. When we come back, we'll continue reading from our article called Avoiding a Fishless Future.
Implementing better fishing practices is no longer a hypothetical solution to overfishing. In 2010, 8 small Pacific states, which between them control the most abundant tuna waters on the planet, decided that the system used by foreign vessels fishing in their waters needed a complete overhaul.
各位好，第一部分我们看到形容词 hypothetical 指假设的或是假定的，例如The philosophy professor puzzled his students with a number of hypothetical questions. 哲学教授提出一些假设性的问题，让学生想破头。或是 Every national army prepares for hypothetical situations that involve war. 每个国家的军队都会为假设性的参战情况做准备。再来，我们看到单字 overfish， 这个字是动词，意思是过度捕捞。举例来说 ，Fish stocks are declining due to overfishing. 由于人们过度捕捞，鱼群数量正在减少。另外，补充2个字首也是 over 的相关单字。第一 ，overweight 这个字是形容词，指过重的或是超重的。例如 ，Tom used to be overweight, but once he started exercising, he lost a lot of fat. Tom 曾经过重，但当他开始运动后，就减掉了大部分的脂肪。第二 ，overload 这个字是动词，指使超载或是使负荷过多。我们可以说 The film's over-the-top action sequences and loud soundtrack really overload the viewer's senses. 那部电影夸张的动作场景与音量大的配乐，让观众感官超载。接着我们看到名词 vessel 指大船、舰或是器皿。例如 When a cruise ship or other large vessels need to pass, the bridge is raised to let them through. 当邮轮或其他大船要经过时，该座桥会升起让船通过。或是 In the museum, I saw a clay vessel that held wine thousands of years ago. 在博物馆里，我看到一个有1000年历史的盛酒陶器。另外，除了上面的意思，这个字还可以指血管。举例来说 Mary went to see a doctor because a blood vessel burst in her eye. Mary 去看医生，因为她眼睛里有条血管破裂了。再来，我们看到单字 overhaul 这个字是名词，指对点点点进行彻底改革或是全面修改。例如 The politician called for a complete overhaul of the healthcare system. 那名政客呼吁要彻底改革健保制度。另外，这个字也可以当动词，念作 overhaul， 像是 Many companies have had to overhaul their strategy to keep up with the times. 许多公司不得不彻底改革策略，才能与时俱进。
Okay, let's take a look at today's lesson. We'll take a look at the first paragraph. It says, implementing better fishing practices is no longer a hypothetical solution to overfishing. So, of course, we want to begin better fishing practices. So if you start to do something, if you have a new policy or a new idea and you put it into effect, if you start using it, then you implement that policy. So yes, implementing better fishing practices is no longer a hypothetical solution to overfishing. So in other words, if we start having better fishing practices, it's not just a hypothetical situation. It can actually be real. It can be a real solution to overfishing.
So before there was an idea, it was abstract, it was kind of nebulous and vague. Now it's no longer that way at all. It's not hypothetical. This is a real solution to overfishing. Get this, in 2010, 8 small Pacific states, which between them control the most abundant tuna waters on the planet, decided that the system used by foreign vessels fishing in their waters needed a complete overhaul. They probably said, you guys, with your fleets of big ships and your helicopters and these gigantic nets, you're stealing entire schools of fish, cut it out. No more of that. We've got abundant tuna waters here, and we want them to stay that way. I believe, by the way, here that the word abundant means plentiful. There's a lot of it. And then we also have tuna. I think we all know what tuna is. If you go to a good Japanese restaurant, at the top of the menu there, the most expensive fish is going to be tuna. Bluefin tuna, I expect. And yes, people hunt tuna because tuna are delicious, but they're becoming rarer and rarer. So the people here who control these abundant tuna waters, they're saying, hey, the system that you guys are using on your foreign vessels there, it needs a complete overhaul.
Yep, it needs to be completely changed. It needs to be completely redone. You need to start from scratch and do it all over again. And this, of course, is the result of some countries in the Pacific Ocean getting together. They're organizing together to do something about this problem. And this actually happened quite a number of years ago. Back in 2010, we've got 8 small Pacific states. They all got together, and of course these countries are in the middle of the most abundant tuna waters on the planet. So yes, they're controlling all the tuna there, and they decided that the system used by these foreign vessels is no good. You guys got to do it over again. You guys need to reorganize. You need to overhaul. So hopefully that will help out this problem. Good for you guys there in the South Pacific. You're doing something about this problem. Okay, that brings us to the end of the first part of our lesson. Let's now move on to the second part.
Under the old system, in which vessel owners paid the local government just a small percentage of each catch's value, the tuna populations in these waters were in real and present danger of crashing. This would have been a disaster for both the environment and these countries' economies. Now, however, rather than paying by the catch, vessel owners must bid for a fixed allotment of fishing days. This allows the countries to limit the number of vessels entering their waters and implement rules and incentives that encourage sustainable fishing practices. The results have been extremely positive: a healthy growth in tuna numbers and a big increase in income for the countries themselves.
第二部分我们看到名词 allotment 指配额或是分配，例如Judy complained that her 10-minute time allotment was too short. Judy 抱怨她只被分配到10分钟，太短了。最后我们看到单字 incentive， 这个字是名词，指激励、奖励或是鼓励。例如 Some parents offer their children money as an incentive to get good grades. 有些父母提供孩子零用钱，当作考试得高分的奖励。另外，除了上面的意思，这个字还可以指诱因或是动机。例如Not everyone is familiar with our product, so they may need an incentive to buy. 不是所有人都熟悉我们的产品，他们也许需要一个诱因才会购买。
Okay, so under the old system, in which vessel owners paid the local government just a small percentage of each catch's value, the tuna populations in these waters were in real and present danger of crashing. So they would go there, they would fish, they'd take a lot of tuna, harvest a lot of tuna, and then pay, a certain amount to these particular governments. But the way that they were fishing these tuna, they were fishing them in a dangerous way. They were overfishing them to the point that those particular populations of tuna could have crashed. And this crashing, the crashing of these populations of tuna, this crashing would have been a disaster for both the environment and these countries' economies. Okay, no more tuna, no more money. That's not good for the economies of these small islands. And it would also wreck the food chain and the environment in that particular area as well. So now, however, rather than paying by the catch, vessel owners must bid for a fixed allotment of fishing days. So you just can't drive in there and stay as long as you want and then pay a fraction of your catch. Now you've got to bid for a fixed allotment of fishing days. That's the system here. You're only going to be allowed to fish for a small period of time, or for a limited period of time, I should say, and you've got to bid for these days.
Yep, you bid. You offer some money for something, but of course there are other companies bidding as well, so it's kind of like an auction here, and so they just accept the best bid, and that particular company wins, and then they go in there and can fish, but they've got some limitations here. They bid for a fixed allotment of fishing days. An allotment just means a portion. You can only go in there for a certain amount of time. You can't go in there for as long as you want to. And because of those restrictions, because of those limitations, this allows the countries to limit the number of vessels entering their waters and implement rules and incentives that encourage sustainable fishing practices. So indeed, they can implement those rules, they can tell these fishing companies what to do, and they can also give them some incentives. If you do this or if you do that, and that's a good thing, then we will reward you somehow.
There you go. We've got these incentives that encourage sustainable fishing. Basically, if you fish sustainably, here's something good that's going to happen to you, or here's something that's going to motivate you so that you fish sustainably. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about an incentive. Yeah, when I was growing up, I used to be quite lazy, okay? When I was in school, I didn't really care about my studies, and then one day my dad said, Jeff, every time you get an A, I will pay you $5. And I went, deal. You know why? Because now I had a reason to get good grades. I was motivated. I had an incentive to get good grades.
Well, I wish my parents would have done that to me, but I guess parenting comes in different forms here. But again, they're giving some incentives to these companies to go in there, and the results have been extremely positive. It is actually working here. A healthy growth in tuna numbers and a big increase in income for the countries themselves has been the result of this particular incentive or these policies. And of course, we've got this healthy growth in tuna numbers. The numbers are recovering. They're coming back. The tuna numbers are returning, and those countries are making more money as a result of this. So that tells us that there is some reason for optimism in terms of fishing stocks, but it might be too late for the North Atlantic cod.
Oh, don't bring that up again. You're breaking my heart there, Roger. They thought that if they gave the North Atlantic cod populations enough time to recover, that the cod would come back the same way that these tuna numbers have been increasing and stuff like that. These tuna populations are healthy. They're coming back. They're growing in numbers. Yay, this is all positive. This is all sustainable. The same thing cannot be said for the North Atlantic cod population. They've tried to open that fishery a couple of times, and it's just been a disaster. For right now, Canada has said this North Atlantic cod fishery, well, it remains closed, and it's going to remain closed indefinitely until we're sure that the cod have rebounded as far as their populations are concerned. Anyways, folks, with that, it is time for us to take a short break, but don't go away. When we come back, we'll be wrapping up our article on overfishing.
The success of this nations-wide agreement, known as the Nauru Agreement, has provided a fantastic example to other small nations dependent on the fishing industry. By taking similar steps, they too should be able to protect their waters against the harms of overfishing, thus ensuring a sustainable future for themselves and for our oceans.
Okay, now remember we've been talking about this kind of agreement between several South Pacific nations. And the success of this nations-wide agreement, known as the Nauru Agreement, has provided a fantastic example to other small nations dependent on the fishing industry. So yes, again, this is what we've been talking about, this nations-wide agreement. And it has been quite successful. And specifically, if you want to know the name of this agreement, well, it's referred to as the Nauru Agreement. And again, it's given the rest of the world an example. Hey, look at these nations in the South Pacific there. They're small, they don't have a lot of people, but still they are very successful with these new policies. So the rest of us can learn something from them. We can increase our fishing industry, and we don't have to kill all the fish in the process.
Sounds good to me. And you know what? This whole agreement, it's been a really good example for other small nations that are dependent on the fishing industry. By the way, when you're dependent on something, you rely on that thing, okay? You need that thing in order to survive, to live, to prosper, to flourish, so on and so forth.
Indeed. Now, by taking similar steps, they too should be able to protect their waters against the harms of overfishing. So we're talking about other small nations that dependent on the fishing industry. So yes, they should take similar steps to the steps that were taken by these countries in the South Pacific. And these other countries should be able to protect their waters against the harms of overfishing. So indeed, if they follow similar steps, they too can have similar increases in their fish stocks, and their fishing industry can still thrive, and people can still make a lot of money, ranging from fishermen in ports to restaurant owners and delivery services and things like that. They can still make enough money to raise their families.
Yep, this should ensure a sustainable future for people, the people reliant on the fishing industry, and for our oceans as well. Don't overfish. It makes no sense to hunt an entire species to extinction. That's just silly. So let's go ahead and ensure a sustainable future, or let's guarantee a sustainable future. Do whatever we can to make sure that we fish sustainably and that our fisheries, the fisheries we have now, will last well into the future.
Okay, that brings us to the end of our discussion for today. Let's turn things over now to our Chinese teacher.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny。 我们来看今天的文法重点。课文一开始写到，实施更好的捕鱼方式不再是过度捕捞的假设性解决方法了。好，文中它用到补充单字 hypothetical， 它是用来形容假设的、假定的。那它的名词是 hypothesis， hypothesis hypothesis。 好，那我们来学它的字首字根。先看到 hypo 这个字首呢，它有低于在什么什么下方，比正常还少的意思。好，那么在 hypothesis 这个字当中，它的字首 hypo 表示下方，那么字根 thesis 这表示位置放置。好，它也有这种命题论点的意 意思？同学们就可以试着联想，把论点放在下方，也就是说你对这个论点是没有把握而不敢提出的。我们用这种方式去联想到 hypothesis， 它是假设、假说、假定的语义。那顺便补充2个有相同字首的单字，第一个是 hypocrisy， hypocrisy， 它的字首 hypo 表示下方，然后字根 crisy 表示决定、评断。如果你在私底下评断又不敢公开表明真正的想法，这样应该很容易联想到 hypocrisy， 它就有虚伪、伪善的那种意思吧。好，再看到第2个补充相同字首的单字是 hypotension， hypotension， 它的字首 hypo 表示低，那么 tension 我们知道有紧张、压力的意思，合在一起 hypotension 其实是指低血压的意思。好，我们接着看到课文第2部分有一个句子说 Now, however, rather than paying by the catch, vessel owners must bid for a fixed allotment of fishing days. 然而现在船东不是依渔获来付钱，而是必须竞标捕鱼日的固定配额。好，句子里面用到 rather than 相当于 instead of， 他们是做介系词用，所以后面是接名词或动名词来表达说不是什么东西，用来代替什么东西。好，那 rather than 也可以当连接词哦，那这时候是用来连接词性相同的字词，表达说而非怎么样，而不是怎么样。特别要注意的是，如果我们用 rather than 去连接不定词的话，那么 rather than 后面这个 to v 的 to 通常会省略。举例来说 She prefers to read a book rather than watch TV， 而不是 rather than to watch TV， 好吗？好，所以这个例句是说她比较想要看书而不是看电视。那这边也帮同学们补充一下 would rather A than B 的用法。 would rather 它表示宁愿、宁可怎么样，比较想要什么。那么 would 常常会跟主格人称代名词缩写变成撇 d， 像是 I'd rather 我宁可怎么样， we'd rather 我们宁可怎么样。好，那么接着我们用 would rather A than B 就可以表达宁可要 A 而不要 B。 这当中的 A 和 B 呢是要用原形动词表达。例如 He'd rather go camping than stay at a 5-star hotel。 他宁可去露营而不要住5星级饭店。好，那以上是今天重点整理，我们来回顾这些单字吧。
Implement. The hospital implemented measures to cut unnecessary costs. Abundant. Christopher built his farm on a piece of abundant land west of the river. Tuna. Roger's wife made him a tuna sandwich for lunch. Vessel. After 6 months on the vessel, the sailors were eager to return home. Bid. The two businessmen bid against each other for the painting. Incentive. The government has introduced incentives to promote electric car ownership. Dependent. That small town on the coast is dependent on the tourism industry. Insure. The tour guide worked hard to ensure the safety of her clients.
Discussion starter starts now!
Hey, Roger. As the article mentions, the practice of overfishing is partly due to the global demand for seafood. Knowing that our consumption habits contribute to the problem, are you likely to eat less fish? Why or why not?
Well, having read the article, I think I will probably eat about the same amount of seafood as I always have, because I'm not really a big fan of seafood. I like to have a fish burger every now and then, or a tuna sandwich or something like that, but I don't generally eat seafood all that often, so I don't think I'm really harming the world's seafood industry by having a tuna fish sandwich every other week or so. How about you?
I don't think I need to change my consumption habits. First of all, like you, I don't eat fish all that often. Second of all, I love tuna. It is a type of fish that I would love to eat, but on principle. Because I know they're being overfished so dramatically, I refuse to eat tuna in any restaurant or in any way, shape, or form. I'm not having that tuna sandwich. I'm not going to the sushi restaurant and getting the good Toro red sushi or anything like that with the tuna in it. No way. I'm going to stick to my guns here, so I don't need to change my consumption habits. Well, everyone, today's article has come to an end, and I sure hope you guys enjoyed reading and learning along with us. I am Jeff.
I am Roger.
See you next time.